Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors. Dr. Allen chats with successful investors exploring their journey from setback to triumph. Through this window, we glimpse the truths that inspire our guests to invest abundantly and flourish in all areas of life. And now your host, Dr. Allen.
Hello and welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, where we delve deep into the lives of our successful guests to learn the secrets of thriving to flourish abundantly in all areas of life. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. Today's guest is a high-performance mind-body coach who specializes in using the body to transform the mind. He specializes in working with individuals who want to take their mind and body beyond the limitations of their current self-image. His coaching methodology of self-mastery aims to cultivate the master inherent in all of us. Welcome to the show, Samir Sharma. Samir, I have really been looking forward to this conversation. I have visited your website and have just been impressed with what looks to me like a life that has been lived genuinely and authentically. From the inception of what it is that you do, to the work that you do in your teaching and coaching, it just looks to me like you transmit that authenticity in everything that you do. So if you could, I'd like you to just kind of think back to where perhaps this inspiration began and where it all started from.
Yeah, I guess it began really from childhood and growing going up through school and college, trying to live authentically and living an authentic life for me has been a combination of listening to my intuition and trusting what feels right to me intuitively, as well as learning from my failures and realizing, well, that didn't quite pan out the way I thought it would or I was told it would. And a lot of times what didn't work out, what wasn't authentic, was usually because I tried to rationalize the decision versus just going with the intuitive hit and feeling my way through versus trying to think my way through. That ultimately has led me to where I am, where I've had various careers, I've gotten various degrees and tried to subscribe to what my environment, what my society has told me was the recipe for success. And in my case, it didn't work out that way. I did what I was told, but it didn't get me where I wanted to go. And so I had to then just honor who I was and say, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to fit the square peg in the round hole because I can't. I've tried it and it doesn't work. And just really having the courage to say, this is who I am. And if who I am isn't good enough, then so be it. But this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, society has all kinds of messages for us. All of our cultures, I think, try to actually diminish the intuition within us with all of the shoulds, shouldn'ts, and should nots, and should do's, and so on and so forth. And we stifle that intuition. But I'm really impressed with the fact that, it takes a lot of us a long time to actually learn to listen to that intuition within us and to put all of those shoulds and should nots aside. I know I was close to 40 years before I really had the insight that I was listening to the wrong messages. But you came to it fairly early. Can you think, or can you pinpoint a specific time in your life or a specific event that really said, aha, this is it. I've really got to start listening to the voice within?
Yeah. So sure. So, one of the things that I am and I do is martial arts. Martial artists I teach, and it's a big part of my coaching practice. I had no intention of becoming a martial artist. It was something I enjoyed as a kid. You watch the Kung Fu movies and horse around with your friends. And, that was always very interesting to me. But it was never a career decision or something that I would see myself pursuing as a passion for the rest of my life. So back in the mid 90s, when I just graduated from college, I was on an assignment for the first company I worked for. It's a multinational firm. They put me down in Florida for a project. And one evening, my roommate and I, we went looking around local town, looking for a place to eat. We pulled into a strip mall, and while we were waiting for our food at the restaurant, I saw this, what seemed to be a martial arts class being performed on the other side of the strip mall. And I was just immediately really intrigued. And so I told my roommate, I said, hey, I'm going to go watch this class and I'll be back in a few minutes. I just want to check it out. A few minutes turned into almost an hour. And at the end of the class, I just went to the instructor and I said, where do I sign up? That was it for me. I never looked back. And that was the beginning of my passion and career in the martial arts. And it's been there ever since. So that's where my intuition said, you're doing this. You don't have a choice. So sometimes the thing you're looking for is looking for you, and it chooses you. And that was a situation where I just knew, in your gut, in your being, that this was it. The brain had nothing to do with it.
What is interesting, of course, to me is that that really, to some degree, up to that point, you had, like all of us tend to do, I think, stifled that intuitive part of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But in one moment there, suddenly there was this electricity, there was this, aha, I've got to do this.
Mm-hmm.
How did you flip that switch from, I'm not going to listen to all those shoulds and should nots, I'm going to do this?
I guess just my enthusiasm, the energy, and the excitement I had for it overrided any kind of doubt or concern that my rational mind could fabricate. Being as a naturally kind of emotional, intuitive guy, I kind of rely on that more than my brain. I don't consider myself that smart. Let's put it that way. I usually cannot quantitatively figure things out, but when I trust my feeling, it usually works in my favor. And so in certain situations, your excitement and your feeling for something is so strong that the thinking mind can't even compete. And to me, those are those instances where you got to go with it. Otherwise, you're missing on a big opportunity.
So you moved forward with the martial arts. And yet, as you moved into that, you followed that passion. Were there doubts? Were there concerns that arose as you got into that process?
Yeah, sure. Even though I was so excited and passionate about it, when you get into something, at least I'll speak for myself, I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist. So I really want to master that skill. My great fortune has been that I have been blessed to have incredible teachers. The people I studied with, both in martial arts and other aspects of my life, have usually been the best of the best. And on one sense, that's a huge blessing because who else would you train with, right? But at the same time, it's hard not to look at people as an icon and say, wow, he or she is so amazing. I don't know if I could ever do that. Could I ever be that good? And so that kind of self-doubt can plague you. And it did for me from time to time, where I'd say, man, I'm never going to measure up to my teachers. I'll never be that good. And then I guess maybe from enough experience and from enough, successes that I said, yeah, I probably could be. Maybe I'll never be a world-renowned master or something, but I can get pretty far with this. And so there's a point where you just, where I felt like I'm always going to have those doubts. And I think we all do to some degree. I don't think that part of you ever goes away. It ever shuts up. I just think the voice just gets softer. And I think with enough practice, with enough experience, you learn to just accept it, that it's sort of like the background chatter, but it's not you. And it's something that I learned from my years of studying meditation, is that you aren't what you think. You know, Descartes often said, I think, therefore I am. I don't think that's necessarily correct. Because you're always going to have thoughts. You're always going to have this background chatter of the monkey mind, as they say. As you live your life, as you get deeper into whatever you do, your craft or practice, that voice has less and less significance. And you start to trust the feeling, the intuitive, that flow state more than anything else. And I think that's probably the best antidote to that sense of doubt and belief, is to just trust that feeling and keep going forward.
Well, it's one thing to have these doubts reinforced from the outside, and it's another thing to have to deal with those internal doubts as they arise within us. But I like how you explain that it isn't just a process of getting rid of those doubts. It's just that process of allowing those doubts to be, and just allowing yourself to trust in your own tuition and to push forward with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't imagine that you made an instantaneous transformation from that corporate world that you had been conditioned to be in, to actually stepping into an entrepreneurial situation based upon particularly martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that transitional phase there?
Sure. So I realized pretty early on I wasn't a very good employee. I didn't have the temperament for it, and I certainly didn't like the rigid corporate structure that a corporation working in that environment imposes on. It kind of went against my very fabric. You know, being an artist, being a martial artist, being an art major in school, I came from a very sort of creative Gestalt kind of environment. And then immediately you get dropped into this rigid corporate culture. You just feel confined. There's a sense of like, you feel trapped. At least I did. And the more I tried to spread my wings, the more I tried to express myself, the more I was reprimanded, or let's say I was not rewarded for that. And so after enough of that, I said, I can't do this. I'm not a corporate guy. I'm not doing this anymore, because it just felt like a violation to my soul, so to speak, not to be too, philosophical. But again, it went back to sense of, what does this feel like? This feels stifling. This feels suffocating. And I can't imagine. I looked at my manager or my boss, and I asked, is that who I am going to be in 20 years? Is that the end result of all of this? And I said, I don't want that. And so I guess just through the constraints and the difficulties of trying to be me in that environment, that forced me to make that change, that this ain't for me. I'm not doing this. And that led me to finding myself and trying other things and other paths. And it ultimately led me to be where I am today, where I had enough failures that they taught me that you're not the square peg in the round hole. You can't do it. You got to just accept who you are.
It certainly is, one thing to come to that realization that you're not, you're just not fit for that corporate world. It's still yet another thing to leave that, because that corporate world comes with a lot of assurance, a lot of affirmations that, yes, this is the path, this is what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
and yet you had the courage to leave that. Uh, how did you find that courage to do that?
I think it was a combination of pain and stubbornness. I think the two can be a very potent motivator, fuel for change. The pain of being in that environment and the stubbornness to not conform. And so for me, I do have that a little bit of a rebellious independent streak. That was enough for me to break free of that, you know. And like you said, the corporate world has a lot of they dangle a lot of carrots in your face. There's a lot of potential golden handcuffs that will restrain you.
Mm-hmm.
And call it providence or whatever, but I guess I figured that out early enough that although this looks tempting right now, it's actually going to stifle me in the long run. It's not going to allow me to be who I want to be, or at least at that time.
Well, tell us a little bit about those first steps when you stepped out of that corporate uh, world and into that entrepreneurial world. So as you're thinking about that just for a moment, listeners and viewers, today my guest is Shamir Sharma. He is a high-performance mind-body coach who specializes in using the body to transform the mind. And he has lived the authentic life that he teaches and that he coaches. So what were those first steps like?
So my first, I guess, experience coaching was when I was in the corporate world, and I actually ended up coaching my boss, of all people. We're actually still very good friends and become very close over time, but I found myself in situations where we would be, you know, we'll get a coffee break or something, and she would be complaining to me about a situation at work. And an hour later, I would kind of talk her off the ledge. And I found myself doing that a lot. And I thought, wait a second, she's my supervisor. Well, why am I giving her advice? But through those experiences, I found myself in those positions where people would come to me for advice. They would look to me for some sort of degree of guidance. And for some reason, I was able to provide it. And I couldn't explain to you why, but it just came through to me. And it felt really good. It felt that, wow, that was effortless. Like, it didn't feel like I was pretending to be someone or feeling contrived in any way. It just felt like I was channeling something that was coming through me, like I'm sort of an instrument for it. And as I got deeper into my practice, my Eastern practices and the martial arts and things like that, I noticed that those principles informed a lot of what I was talking about. And so between getting those early experiences of coaching somebody, providing guidance and advice, alongside deepening my own practice, I realized that really my approach was informed by my physical practice. And that's ultimately what led me to create this sort of coaching methodology of self-mastery around these fundamental principles that I learned through my disciplines.
Sounds like a fascinating journey. And as you tell it, it seems like a natural flow, and that everything just was just like a creek bubbling down the hill, and there were no boundaries, there were no fences, no barriers, nothing in the way. But I know that's not true in life. I know
Right.
that there had to be obstacles that were in your way. What was one of the major obstacles?
Major obstacles. Oh, wow, so many. Well, one of the most immediate ones was just my family and my immediate environment, circle of friends, peers who thought I was nuts. They looked at me And they said, what you're giving up that corporate job, you're giving up the security, the safety, and all those things. Because it was so unlike anything anyone in my circle had done or even thought of doing. And there was no blueprint for it. I didn't have a mentor at the time or someone I could look at and say, oh, this is how he or she got there. Let me just follow their footsteps. I was literally just finding my way through the dark and just really just trying to say, okay, what next? What's in front of me right now? What makes sense? How does this feel? And just kind of allowing things to happen versus forcing things to happen based on someone else's paradigm.
Well, a fascinating story, Samir, and a fascinating journey. And I love how you've allowed the intuition in your life to be that crystal guiding light that has led you to where you are. And I love the artistry that you express in everything that you do. It's a beautiful, authentic, genuine life. We're coming to the end of our time here. My guest today is Shamir Sharma. And I have one last question for you, Shamir. But before we go into that, share with our listeners how it is that they can get in touch with you.
Sure. So you could reach me through my website, which is just my name, samirsharma.com. If you're interested in doing some private coaching, there's an application form there. I think the tab says apply for coaching. Short questionnaire you can fill out that just helps me get to know you, and we can take it from there. You can also reach me on Facebook and send me a friend request, DM me, and then we can connect that way as well.
My last question is, when you come to the end of life's journey, what would you like your epitaph to read?
I think it would probably say, I was more than enough.
And I think you certainly are. It has truly been a pleasure having you, Samir, and I look forward to future conversations. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital works with both new and established investors nationwide, creating opportunities to flourish in all areas of life. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures great and small flourish abundantly. For resources to enhance your well-being through multifamily real estate investment, connect with us online at capital.steedtalker.com.